Welcome back to Season 3 of How to Smash the Motherhood Penalty. This podcast is brought to you 100% by Works for Everyone, which is my business, Emma McLean. We are a professional development company that partners with New Zealand corporates to help them retain and grow their working parent talent. And we are so delighted to do that through leadership programs, executive coaching, and systemic change initiatives like this podcast and the New Zealand Part-Time Power List. So welcome aboard and thank you for listening. I have been loving talking to all the listeners who have reached out about how much they enjoyed Season 2, Making Space for Dads. And in this season, we're going to continue to mix it up. We've got some fantastic interviews coming up, all having the motherhood penalty at its heart, because we still need to talk about this. If you have enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe to it. Subscriptions don't cost anything, but it just means that you'll be the very first to know about the new episode that comes out. And if you are interested in more working parent content, come and follow me on Instagram, Works for Everyone. I often post working parent hints and tips and also video clips of these interviews. But enough about me. Back to my guests. See you soon. Welcome back. It's your friend Emma. And today I am delighted to welcome Dr. Amanda Sterling to the podcast. It's been a long time coming, but we needed to get her voice on the motherhood penalty. Dr. Amanda Sterling is a principal director and an award-winning consultant who partners with organisations to remove barriers for women into leadership. Amanda combines her decades of experience working in corporate leadership development and culture change with her groundbreaking PhD research to support organisations in increasing the representation of women in leadership roles and closing their gender pay gaps. Amanda is also a proud parent to one son, probably her most important role, but I've put those words in her mouth.
Hardest and best job in the world.
Welcome, Amanda. Please share with my audience anything else you'd love to introduce yourself about.
Oh, hard question. I'm really looking forward to unpacking some of those. In our conversation, I think you've summed that up really nicely, but I do have a proper introduction that I have been practicing. So if I can do that.
Let's do that, because we love proper introductions.
Yeah,
so let's go.
It often opens up different conversations with people as well. So tēnā koutou, really a pleasure to be here and having this conversation. He fifth generation Pākehā ahau, no ngā whenua o Kotemana, no te tuatahi ahau kaupra, te moana, ko Waitakere te tūranga waiwai, ko Atkinson te monga, ko Waitemata te moana, ko Amanda taku ingoa, ko Sterling taku whānau, ko Joshua taku tama. Nau mai haere mai, and thank you so much for having me today.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Amanda. That was awesome. And that's a beautiful intro, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I really want to talk into your work, and Amanda's actually just published some recent research, which I'd love to delve into.
So exciting.
But just at a more of a macro level or a bit more of a personal lens, like you're a mum, and so what I'm curious about is, what's been your experience of working and having a family? And do you think you paid the motherhood penalty?
Yeah, so I ended up doing a PhD because of my experience, because people always ask, why did you do a PhD? And so when I went back to work after my son, he was a year old, and I was dropping off this crying child at daycare. I'd gone back part-time. I'd been told that I was getting sidelined into less challenging projects, being kept out of global projects. I felt like I was undervalued in my role, and shortly before I had returned to work after maternity leave cover, I had sat down with my manager to talk about my transition back, and she let me know at that time that the woman who had been doing my maternity leave, they had created a new role within our team. It was a more senior role, and she was going to be taking on that position. And I said, okay, I mean, that's great, but why was I not considered for that senior role because I have arguably more experience and expertise in this. And I couldn't get an answer. And so that was just the beginning of a journey for me in going back to work and feeling like I couldn't be the mum that I wanted to be and do meaningful work and be valued in that space. So that's how I ended up doing a PhD, the short story of it, because for me at the time, it was a way for me to, well, firstly, I started it to try and make sense of my own experience. At the time, I felt like it was like I had failed. I was a failure because I wasn't doing the mum stuff very well. I wasn't doing the wife stuff very well, and I wasn't doing the work stuff very well. And that was why I was being undervalued and sidelined. So I went into the doctoral research to try and understand what I had done wrong and how we could better support women mothers through work and leadership. And I ended up in a completely different place to where I started.
Amazing. I mean, you did this PhD because you kind of had a fire in your belly.
Yeah.
But I heard you say, what have I done wrong here?
Yeah.
And what I'm curious about is, had you done anything wrong?
Looking back in retrospect, I didn't. In fact, like sometimes when I tell women what I did at the time, they go, "Oh my gosh, you were so brave to do that." Because so the short answer is no. But I was also the person that went, okay, so why was I not considered for that role? Okay, right. You can't really give me any reasons for that. Well, I got told that I lacked confidence and I lacked experience. And I went, okay, give me specific examples of where I'm not showing confidence. And then they couldn't really give, like, all the examples were, things that, I was a bit cold that morning or something like that. And I was like, well, how would you feel if you were up 3 or 4 times a night with a crying child and then up since 4 a.m.? Like, this isn't confidence. This is sleep deprivation. It's something else entirely. And then I got told that I lacked experience with execs. And I said, well, I've just been doing some work with the marketing exec the week before and the manufacturing. So give me, and I couldn't. And so I guess the only thing I maybe did wrong was not get with the program and just go with, oh yeah, I'll just do this and accept it and not ask any questions and turn up and do my job. But that's never been my style. Like, I do great work, but I kind of need, I need the space to be able to do great. I'm not someone who turns up to work and half-asses it. That's just not my thing. And I guess I wasn't being given the opportunity to do great work.
Yeah. And I mean, I asked that question because I know clearly you did nothing wrong, right? But I think sometimes, and in my coaching practice, we can frame this all up as our problem.
Yeah.
And in fact, I imagine what you found was that you wore the impact of the system, but the system wasn't your problem.
No.
The fact that a system doesn't recognize the pressures that when you are a returning parent you are under and how that might change who you are. And I mean, that's a lot of what you learned in your PhD.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it gets like, I was reflecting on this morning as well. I don't think any of it was maliciously intentional. But I think what tends to happen is that we assume, for women in particular, that we have this other priority and therefore our career is going to take a back step. But those assumptions then lead to a whole lot of behaviors that just it left me feeling undervalued. I think my manager at the time thought that she was helping me by taking away these really challenging projects that would require travel. But all it left me going was, I don't understand my role anymore. I don't know why I haven't got that position and I wasn't in the conversation around that. And it left me feeling really undervalued. And so you can kind of, like, as someone who's been brought up, having children later in life, building a great career, like, our careers are really important to us. You can start to feel like you suck at being a mum because we thought that was supposed to come naturally. And then you go back to work and you're like, well, I suck at this too. And then you end up feeling like you suck at everything.
Mm.
And it's not a nice feeling. And then I think that then compounds into we feel undervalued and under-recognized. Women then lose confidence.
Mm.
So it ends up in this really awful spiral.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, so many will resonate with what you've just said, Amanda. It is a spiral, and you don't feel like you're doing anything well.
No.
And it's not you; it's the system that we're all working in. So, what are some of the solutions? I mean, like, I'd love to talk about, you know, your recent research. If you could kind of share why you did it, and I know it's all about solutions, which I
Yeah.
think is amazing. And yeah, what you found, that would be cool. Let's kick into that.
Yeah, so the research Emma's talking about is a survey I did, which captured the thoughts from 212 women in leadership, and I did that survey because I've been researching this for like I think nearly 8 plus years now. Women in leadership, mothers at work, mothers in leadership, and all that. So my PhD really deep dived into the barriers women face, and I've kind of been, for the last 8 years, reading a lot around the barriers, the problem, and we know this to death. We know what the problem is. And there were a couple of things that happened at the end of last year. One of them was I was running a workshop for a senior leadership team, and the GM was kind of framing up the challenge that they had around women's representation and how problematic that was and the reasons for it and all this kind of stuff. And I had this feeling like the energy was getting sucked out of the room in this conversation. Like this feels like a really big problem and we're not doing very well. And actually we've gone backwards and we don't really know how to solve it. And Amanda's here to help us navigate this. And I was just like, oh my God, this just feels quite depressing. Like it's not actually like, yes, it's a problem, but it is manageable. But that feeling of the energy being sucked out of the room. And so that was kind of one moment. And then the other moment was, I think there was another, I can't remember which one it was, but the McKinseys and the Deloittes, they always release these reports around women's representation. And a lot of it focuses on the problems. And I keep getting asked this question, like, what are the solutions? What do we actually do? I was like, well, there's actually no research that kind of goes, well, what is having an impact on women's careers? So I decided to do the survey and just kind of see how it lands. So the purpose of it was to understand what is having the most positive impact on women's careers into leadership, and then what organizations are doing to support women's careers, and then what the gaps are. So there was one particular question in this survey that I think it's got, I can't remember how many factors, but it had all of these factors that have come through in the research and the work I've been doing with organizations that are things that we talk about as helping women's careers. And so I listed all of those out and I asked women to rank their top three. What are the top three things having the most positive impact on your career into leadership? And then answer questions about what their organization was doing. And it was really surprising what came out of that. It wasn't what I was expecting. But the top two factors, or the top four, I always like to ask this question when I talk about this research, like, what do you think the top four factors are? But the top four were manager support, partner support, were first equal, and then leadership development programs and flexible work, which we kind of know because those are the things that most organizations focus on, is those last two. But what I think we're not really talking about enough is the manager support and the partner support.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, you said that they weren't the results you were expecting. What did you think would be the top two?
I was thinking things more like male role models, female role models, male allyship. I kind of suspected flexible work and leadership development would be up the top as well, because that comes through in the academic research. But I wasn't expecting those two, but they do make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to have some numbers behind this, right?
Yeah.
Because people who have followed my work will know that I really think partners are a big part of success, and who you decide to partner with or whether you partner at all is probably your biggest career decision.
Yeah.
I also think the role of the manager, like it's one of the reasons why I offer manager support coaching when someone returns to work, for
Yeah.
example, because there's that phrase, isn't it? People don't leave companies, they leave
Yes.
managers.
Yeah.
So what could organizations do? Because they can probably influence the manager
Yeah.
experience, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard to implement. I mean, you can influence the partner experience, but it's kind of a bit different. But yeah,
Yes.
what are your recommendations around if you're listening to this and you've got a whole lot of leaders in your organization, what would you be recommending to them?
Yeah, I mean, and I think the top two things there are, particularly around the manager support, are accountability and
Mm,
measurement. And I've seen that come through. Like I did this with Lisa Mulligan, this case study at the end of last year on Z Energy and what they were doing to achieve their leadership representation and close their gender pay gap. And the metrics and accountability was a big part of that. So they were actually reporting on things like representation and engagement and turnover and who was taking parental leave, how many of that was men and how many of that was women, and then building that into managers' performance reviews as well. So it wasn't just a metric or, oh yeah, we're going to try and achieve these targets across the organization. It was actually part of the performance conversations that managers were having. So it makes it a priority for managers to address and do something about that. And then I think this is the second part of it, which is I've seen this across my career as well. Like managers often don't have the skills to have those conversations with people. A lot of people still get promoted into those middle senior roles because they're experts in their particular profession and they're not necessarily people leaders. And so there is a piece of coming back to how do you equip your managers and leaders with the skills to have career conversations, to not make assumptions around women and mothers, to actually go ask those questions around what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you, to be able to create team environments where people with a variety of different lived experience can contribute their perspectives. And a lot of that comes back to just good people leadership skills. And so it's doubling down on managers' capabilities to do that.
mm, mm. It's almost like it's not necessarily that we need leaders that are doing things specifically for women.
No.
Because actually, if we adopt this way, everyone wins, don't
Yes.
they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where my PhD research landed as well, is that we're still working within some of these really outdated work methods, ways of understanding leadership, but actually the skills that leaders need within organizations are the same skills they need to lead a, a business that is thriving and adaptable and resilient, all of those things to be a successful organization. And if you're doing that, then you're also going to bring in, like, inclusion is just going to happen naturally as part of that process.
Mm.
And I kind of have I don't really like, I think it's easy to call it inclusive leadership or inclusive capability because that's like the sexy word of the moment. But I don't think it's actually about that at all. Like, it is just good leadership and good management. And if you're doing that well, then it's going to naturally lead to inclusion, and it's going to naturally lead to having the capabilities your organization needs to be adaptable and resilient and innovative and meet the needs of your customers and all of those good things.
Mm. Love it. Good old-fashioned leadership.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Good old fashioned leadership. But it seems so simple though, right? But it is just bringing it back to, okay, you're connecting those dots together. And this is where my career is always focused on: how do you achieve what your business is trying to achieve? And how does your organizational culture and, like, the levers, like your recruitment practices, your leadership capabilities, your development frameworks, your performance systems, like, how does that all lead to you achieving what your business is trying to achieve?
Mm. Mm. Love it. So, what about partners, right? There's two first equal things that
Mm-hmm.
have a big impact on women being able to be in leadership roles, partners. So, if someone's listening to this and they are partnered, what's something they need to be thinking about or doing? Like, what could people do about this?
I stray into dangerous territory when people ask me about this, though.
Yes.
You know what?
I think straight into that territory.
I'm divorced. I think it's a tricky one from an organizational level. Like there is, and I know you and Stephanie Powell talk about this as well as the role of parental leave. And last week it was interesting hearing from Matt Pritchard from KPMG talk about his experience and the impact he's seen of men taking parental leave and the empathy that gives men for understanding what it's like and then what that transition is like going back to work, as well as experiencing firsthand those caregiving and domestic responsibilities and actually like learning the stuff that women don't it's not natural to us either, and learning those things. And then the impact that has when men come back to work and how that can help shift gender norms. So I think that's certainly part of it from an organizational perspective is it's not about women taking parental leave. It's balancing that out with men doing it as well and having the policies as well as the financial incentives to do that. And there's still a lot more work to be done. That's not going to directly impact your organization, but if more organizations are doing that, it will impact our society overall. So it's kind of from an organizational perspective. From an individual perspective, because I have this conversation with my girlfriends who are still in relationships and we kind of talk, hypothetically about it. But the thing that I always say to people is that if you have a conversation with your partner around your career and how you're both navigating and supporting that, and that can be an awkward, uncomfortable conversation to have, but it's also a really important one. And it might be messy as well, but you work through it together. And if you can't have that conversation, this is where I go into dangerous territory, then that's probably a different conversation for you to be having if your career is important to you.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been coaching mums and dads for 6 years now. And the biggest thing I've learned is that what's happening at home has the biggest impact on what happens at work. And I agree with you. I think these conversations can be awkward because we're actually smashing up against a whole lot of beliefs and society expectations and have things really changed. And so I think it is important for people to be kind to yourselves when you are having these conversations. And I think they're important to have because what I've seen in my work, and every family is different, but if we don't have conversations, we don't have better conversations, one parent will emerge as the default parent. And that's just the way it'll be. And the reality is you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
So, and people who are parenting alone, this is next level hard, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's about leaning into those awkward conversations.
Yeah. Awkward conversations. See where they go.
And what other interesting things did you kind of identify in this solutions for getting women into leadership research?
I mean, the interesting things were, like, because I'm a data research nerd. I love looking at it and going, okay, what are the patterns? What are the contradictions? What are the gaps? What does this tell us about what organizations are doing or not doing? And I think the fascinating thing for me was looking at the things that women were saying were having the most impact on their careers, and then what they were saying about what their organization was doing. Because I think it challenges some of the things. It both challenges, but I think it gives organizations, and by that I mean the people doing this work, culture professionals, HR, learning and development, leadership development specialists. Like I think it gives people greater focus on where they spend their attention and money, because I think there are things that have, like, they're the most popular thing is probably leadership development and flexible work. Like a lot of organizations do that work, but it's considering that as part of a broader ecosystem of initiatives and then filling in some of the gaps. So one of the things I found really interesting was that there was a lot of engagement already with this thinking from the C-suite in particular. There's a lot of role modeling. There's a lot of creating safe spaces for people. There's a lot of having the good conversations around gender equity and leadership, but that's not necessarily filtering down. And so I think that's an opportunity, like to move this beyond the C-suite and actually build this into manager accountability and support. I think there's something in the shifting gender norms around caregiving and something to unpack, particularly around parental leave. So what I saw in the data was that organizations had policies around shared parental leave, but they didn't necessarily have the financial incentives, so more parental leave payments available to men, the KiwiSaver contributions as well. And again, you and Stephanie would probably be able to talk to this a lot more knowledgeably than I would. But I think that's an opportunity to look at, well, how do you incentivize men to take parental leave so that you can shift the norms around gender and caregiving and that sort of thing? So I think this is the bit that I nerd out on, is going, okay, if we know these things are really impactful, where are the gaps?
Yeah, I love that. Just coming up to, how do we incentivize dads to take parental leave? Well, at the heart of that, we pay them.
Yeah.
I mean, again, that event that we were both at a couple of weeks ago, Matt Pritchard, who's the chairman of KPMG, spoke about KPMG's experience of offering 18 weeks paid parental leave to both primary and secondary carers.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that they have had a 43% uptake from their dads on the secondary carers. And, for me, that shows you how we do this. I guess it's common sense, but we work in a system where what is valued is money.
Yes.
And it's I think there's so many, you will know so many dads, Amanda, that would love to take parental leave, love to understand what it's like to be a sole caregiver, to understand, to get into, but at the end of the day, if we are not going to pay people to do it, they're not going to do it. And actually, I just think that KPMG should be applauded for that, because that costs money for them to do that, right? But what Matt said, and again, for everyone who wants to advocate for this at their employer, is that they get payback on this, because when we have leaders, people in our business taking long parental leave, like I don't mean 2 weeks, and I also don't really mean 4 weeks. I mean, like, if we can take it for like 4 months at least, the leaders, the people that are coming back, if they are people leaders, they're better leaders.
Yeah.
And again, I just think this is a win-win-win-win-win slot machine.
Yeah. There's the benefits for that. They come back as better leaders. You're more likely to retain people. You then, and I look at it the other end of that spectrum and around the leadership capability. You actually because you need different perspectives within leadership in order to solve complex problems and do what your business needs to achieve. So there's massive payback for it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so what about your business, Amanda? I ask everyone who comes on here, like, what do you think you're doing to smash the motherhood penalty? So the kind of, and again, I'd love for you to share what you do with organizations and how you think your work is really trying to smash the system that only creates financial penalties for mothers.
Yeah. And I think there's a variety of different things that I do, and I can talk to those. But I think the thing that I do that is different from everybody else doing this work is mine is all led by research. And I think that's really important to note, because one of the things I notice is that when you ask people, okay, how do we solve this problem? It's more often a reiteration of the same things we've always done, but expected different results. And I'll give you an example of that. I was doing some work a couple of years ago, senior women in leadership, and asking, okay, well, how do we fix this within your organization? What are the things that you've seen work? What's worked for you? And how do we shift the dial? And they kept on saying, like, women just need to lean in, work on their confidence, put themselves forward. I've managed to have a career because I've navigated the masculine work system. Gender's not an issue. You've just got to play the boys' game. I've advanced my career because I made the decision not to have children. And a lot of that is really still like it's really problematic because it assumes that women can advance their careers by just fitting in. And that's not actually what we want because that's what leads to women dropping out. So when I talk about being research led, I mean, let's look at what has been done before, what's not worked or still isn't working. Use that to critically question what's actually going on within organizations and then propose solutions and challenge some of that thinking around how we approach this. Because what came through in my PhD research was that actually the way that we understand work and leadership isn't working because it just starts to challenge some of these established like truths about what we do with this. So we move beyond leadership development programs and actually look at systemic change. And I think a lot more of that is happening now, but not to the extent that it could be. I mean, so that's where doing this Women in Leadership Insights to Action report's been really helpful because it puts more data around actually we should be focusing on these things rather than just what's popular. So I think that's really important. This is a journey for me too. I'm doubling down on my nerdy research-led approach because I think it is different and it does offer a different lens. So the kinds of work that I do is the first thing is I take leaders through the research and what it says about women's opportunities to progress their careers, what those barriers are, and what their role is in shifting that. So I do a lot of work mostly with senior men, some senior women as well, mostly leadership teams that are mostly made up of men, and take them on that journey to understanding what the problem actually is and what their role is in shifting it. So that's facilitated workshops. I am doing more work now around building manager capability in this space, like creating psychological safety in teams, having career conversations, understanding the metrics and what to do about them. And that's come out of the report. Manager support's one of the most critical aspects. So there's kind of a piece around workshops and facilitation of these conversations. The second piece, which is more my nerdy, happy place, because I'm a research data nerd. So I do gender equity / leadership pipeline assessments where I go into organizations and do focus groups. I look at all of their data, ask the questions and go, okay, what is the challenge that you're experiencing within your particular context? And then use that data to frame, okay, here's your roadmap. Here's where you can focus your time and attention to have the biggest impact. And then the third piece is around inclusive leadership capability and developing that. And that's come from I've had a couple of decades of experience working in corporate leadership development. So that's kind of pulling that in with the research and going, here are the skills that you need to develop and here's how you develop them. That's the work I do. And it's all based on a lot of research, data, nerdiness.
And so I guess when I hear you talk that all back, right, how your work is sort of trying to smash the system is it's trying to, I mean, I'm just making this up now, so you have to tell me if this is correct. You want to partner with organizations to help them grow their capability around both leaders, but also women who are aspiring leaders so that they can continue to move through, therefore not pay the penalty.
Yeah, so because I get asked this question a lot, I don't work with women per se.
Right.
I have been asked recently to do some more coaching with women one-on-one, but it's not my playground. I don't work with individual women because I don't believe that women are the problem here. I think the system is, and my background is in organizational development, culture change, and leadership capability. So it's looking at the whole organizational system. So recruitment practices, performance, leadership competencies, leadership development, all of those things and going, what in here is causing barriers for women's careers? And what do you need to remove, change, enhance, develop in order to make that pathway for women a lot smoother and more supported?
Okay. So that sounds simple.
What
are the barriers? Get rid of them.
Yeah.
Job done.
Yeah. And I guess that's the value in what I offer, is because I know what they are. I know what works from my corporate background. So I can look at all the data and go, these are the things. And this is what you need to do in order to move this forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And finally, if I gave you a magic wand and you could do anything, there's no rules, to smash the motherhood penalty, which sees women who become mothers pay a financial penalty of up to 55% on their salary and their retirement savings over 10 years, what would you do with that magic wand?
I would make it so that the whole experience that women go through in being pregnant, birthing babies, and breastfeeding, like the most revered goddess, like we worship you, what you do is so special and so important. Like there are sacrifices made in our names when we do this. Like I would make that whole experience that women go through being mothers the most valued, rewarded, celebrated experience of the whole human experience, because that would then value all of the things that wrap around it. So caregiving, and recognize the differences that women have, and like that, we literally create new life. Like that, like out of everything that human, like we create new life.
Yeah.
But in our society, that's kind of hidden and sidelined and ignored and undervalued and all of those things. But what if we flipped that and it was like, oh my God, like lay flowers at our feet because we create new life. Like that's what I would wave the magic wand and do.
I love that. I love that. Revere them, lay flowers at their feet. I would also say lay money, to be honest.
Well, lay money.
Because, I mean, I don't know what kind of magic wand you have, but really how you value mothers is you pay them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get deeply philosophical about it, but we're trying to value something like motherhood within a capitalist patriarchal work system. And so laying money at our feet, like I can understand that, it's also still reinforcing that money is the thing that our world revolves around. And it's then putting those experiences we have, like attaching a dollar value to it, kind of feels icky, but also necessary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we're living in. That's what we're living in. And I get that.
I went like, this is
you're envisaging like a Wonder Woman island, the island of Wonder Woman, which is I love. I love that. I love that magic wand.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you though, because I've always thought having grown, and I know not every woman is able to grow and birth a baby and feed a baby, but having had the privilege of doing that 3 times, I do wonder why women are not running the world. Because it's a pretty amazing thing.
There's a book I read years ago called Woman on the Edge of Time. I don't know if you've come across it.
No.
But it's like a quite a famous feminist novel about this utopian society where they do, like within their little utopian town, they do achieve gender equity, like, and it's all like men and women are just interchangeable and everybody sleeps with everyone. Like there's no, like it's quite
that's a different podcast, Amanda.
Well, it's an entirely different Well, the thing is, the way that they achieve that is that they actually outsource growing humans into these vats.
Oh my goodness me. Right. Well, we've gone there. Okay.
We've gone there. But the thing that they recognize is that the thing that makes women the most powerful, having growing babies, is also our greatest vulnerability and our greatest weakness. And so they remove the vulnerability and weakness to equalize the power dynamics between men and women.
That's fascinating.
That's a fascinating book to read.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, With babies getting growing in vats, I think that's where we'll leave it today. Fair enough, says Amanda. Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you for coming along, sharing the very, very top level of your latest research. I think so many will have found that useful. And I know you can go onto your website and have a look at that research.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How can people do that?
Yeah, so you literally just go to dramandasterling.com
Yeah.
and a little pop-up will come up saying,
Yeah.
do you want to download the report?
Cool. Awesome.
Easy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Emma.
You're welcome. Onwards and upwards.
Onwards.
This podcast was funded by Works for Everyone, a business that is dedicated to supporting working parents and to smashing the motherhood penalty. If this is also your jam, let's stay connected. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for us, Works for Everyone. And if you want more information on how we help businesses put a care wrap around their employees, check us out on worksforeveryone.co.nz. Or if none of these work for you, in the weekends you can find me, Emma McLean, the founder of Works for Everyone, in the queue at Pack and Save Royal Oak or Kmart St Luke's. Onwards!